And let's go to the Rude Guest Hotline. Rude, the most reliable heating and air conditioning products in the DMV, because Barry Svrluga of the Washington Post is waiting for us. And we wanted to talk to him about his exclusive conversation with Mark Lerner that he wrote about in the Post. So, Barry, thanks for a few minutes. So let's just start with kind of how long the conversation was and what kind of ground you got to cover.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you it was a, 60 minutes, 60-minute long, winding, everything covered interview, because it wasn't. There's, a lot of negotiation just to get him to agree to talk, which he really hadn't done publicly, except for brief remarks to our Andrew Golden from the Post last year saying they were taking the team off the market. And even when I broke the story in April 2022 that they were going to put the team on the market, those exchanges were by email. He didn't answer questions verbally. He really has not faced questions from a reporter in years, literally. So he did agree to do this. We had a pleasant chat. It was 10, 12 minutes long. And then, we chatted about other stuff going on in DC, whatever, that doesn't matter to this conversation. But, he's a pleasant person. He's always been a very nice man. But that family has spent the entirety of their now 19 years in a very public position, owning a company that people care about in ways that they don't care about a mall or an office building, not really being very forward-facing people. That's just their nature. But I think it was important to at least have him say, here's why we changed our thinking on selling the team, and here's what we envision going forward, even if those answers don't, provide 100% clarity that a lot of people would like.
So, Barry, that's one of the two huge takeaway conversation pieces I want to have with you. But let's do the first one first that you just referenced. We just wanted to see what was out there. I thought that was an amazing quote that he had. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but when the team was for sale, bids were coming in, and then they went off the market. It was they just wanted to see what was out there. I don't know that's how just want to see what was out there looks to me. But anyway, your thoughts on that?
The translation there is we didn't get our price.
Yeah.
And that's it's as simple as that. And he's not going to say that, and he doesn't have to say that. But if they were going to be blown out of the water by an offer, they would have accepted that offer. I'll go to my grave believing that. I think they still have a price in mind. If somebody came in tomorrow and offered them that price plus $1, I think the team would be back on the market. But that's just not the way things unfolded. And they did say at the beginning of the process that, look, this doesn't mean we're going to completely sell the team 100%. Maybe we could find people who would inject some cash in but not have any influence, more minority partners. You could try to do that. I've never understood the reasons other than ego. Somebody would want to be a minority partner in a sports team because you have the right to put in money that and have no decision-making power. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. So maybe they were looking for that kind of thing. Sure, that's fine. But that didn't happen. None of that happened. And here we are with, another reason to get him to try to talk or try to get him to talk is, you go through this kind of public, not fiasco, but public process and end up in the same place that you started off. It's fair to wonder, well, if you weren't 100% in to the point where you were going to sell off pieces or whatever, it's fair to question, are you 100% in now that you've gotten to the other side of this? And there's been, frankly, more losing than any team in baseball in the last 5 years, and flagging attendance and flagging enthusiasm about the team from the fan base.
And the inability to spend real money, which I want to get into. Barry Svrluga of the Washington Post is with us on Grant and Danny. So I know you asked that question. I want to give you some insight, give us some insight on that. What is the explanation for an offseason where, people will point out, well, here's X amount of millions of dollars they spent. No, Corbin came off the books, and they basically dollar for dollar replaced that with a couple million extra dollars maybe added to payroll. they essentially did not add after a year of Cruz graduating and Wood graduating and being closer and theoretically turning the corner in the rebuild. They had an offseason where they could have gone out and been aggressive, and they were the opposite of that. What is the explanation for that?
It's not one that's particularly satisfying, and on a couple levels, I would say. One, when I asked that, like, you've spent on payroll, you've spent on big contracts in the past. Max Scherzer, $210 million. Jason Worth, $126 million. Patrick Corbin, $160 million. Extensions for Strasburg and Zimmerman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Would you do that in the future? And he said, if Mike Rizzo and the baseball operations department came to us and said, we think that this would be a good move, we would talk about it. That is not, we would do it. So I put in this piece that these words are going to be parsed, and they're going to be parsed because there are so few of them from him, not just in this piece, because there's plenty in the piece, but so few of them over time, year over year. You just don't have a lot of glimpses into their thinking. I mean, I was thinking about this in particular. I was working on trying to get Mark Lerner as I was sitting down in Ashburn for Josh Harris's season-ending press conference. Ted Leonsis does nothing but, get on the airwaves and talk about his teams. So it's a very, very, very different approach. So back to the contracts, he said, we would listen, we would talk about whether it was the right thing for a big contract, a Worth type contract. That's different than saying we would do it. And then secondly, he alluded to the Jason Worth contract, which was the first big free agent signing in 2011. Your good buddy, Jason Worth. I know you guys like to hang out together.
We're pals now.
That's a great thing, Barry.
We're pals now.
He said, the timing was perfect there. He's the guy that got us over the hump. Well, if you look at it, this is exactly the time when they signed Worth. It's an analogous time. It's not a year from now. They signed him coming off of a couple of 100-loss seasons, and then they went 80 and 81 and then won the division in 2012. This was the time, and they did not do that. And I don't have a better answer as to why. And, it's a kind of revelatory about the interview. It wasn't one of those ones where I felt like I had infinite time to follow up and drill down and grill and all that kind of stuff. It was going to be bing, 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 get in and get out. And so I don't have a really satisfying answer as to why did that not happen this season, because this season is analogous to the Worth season signing.
Barry Svrluga with us here on G&D. And it sounds like I'm shooting the messenger here, Barry. You're delivering it. And your point is, of course, correct. It's the big disconnect. That's why so many fans, myself included, you're pulling their hair out and screaming. You look at the parallels. This team is better than that team. The team that just finished playing in 2024, more WAR, one positive WAR in that 2010 pitching staff. Livan Hernandez is 110 years old. Half the team's offensive WAR was Ryan Zimmerman. You look at this group now, more everywhere, more young players, a better core. This was the time. Do you really think that this was a baseball decision or something else? And if it's something else, obviously part of a much larger conversation.
Well, I mean, I think it's not a baseball decision. And that's not to say, Danny, that, okay, so you take Soto out of the equation because they weren't going to spend $765 million. And I think you can defend that, even though I'm an enormous, Juan Soto, beat the drum for Juan Soto. But I think you can pick apart, why did Pete Alonso not get more than 2 years from the Mets? Alex Bregman, it took a long time to get the deal he got from Boston. If you go around and look at the offensive free agents, you can pick holes and say those weren't the guys that are going to be difference makers for us in 6 or 7 years. I know that they wanted to go after Christian Walker and they were prevented from doing that. You can also argue, is he really a game changer as an aging first baseman? Excellent defensively, can hit for power, but maybe you could argue that Nathaniel Lowe is a okay version of what you would have gotten out of an aging Christian Walker. So you can parse the baseball stuff. But I think the answer to your question is, if there had been somebody on the market that Mike Rizzo and his staff said, this is the one, my sense is the answer would have been, we're not doing it now. And and again, we did not address this very specific thing in our interview, but my strong sense from around the organization is what I would consider to be a little bit backwards thinking, that we need more people to buy tickets so that we have revenue coming in to pay players, I think is backwards from we need to pay players so that people have reason to buy tickets. That's how I would phrase it. And then, further complicating all of this is, of course, Masson, the 20-year shadow over the entire operation. They're not getting the money from the Orioles right now for the latest 5-year installment of Masson TV rights. That's a legitimate hindrance. Like, if they don't get that money, that's $320 million from 2022 to 26 that they could turn into, mid-level free agents or whatever they wanted to turn it into. I would give them the right to say, and they can't, Mark couldn't talk about this because it is in the courts, but like, that is pretty legitimate that they're getting right now zero in that revenue stream when they should be getting, an average of about, I guess it would be $60 or $70 million a year.
That's well said. Barry Svrluga's with us on G&D. So I guess I have a two-parter. One of them is just a reaction to what you were just saying, or at least a rebuttal, and I'm kind of arguing with someone who's not here who you're explaining the thoughts of. But you would think that they would get the if you build it, they will come thing, right? Like, in that they've had 6 years where their attendance was well over 30,000 a game, and they were the 2013 to 2019 years. It was when the team was good at baseball. And I don't think it's like that much of a science experiment to figure out that when you're winning 94 games, more people are coming to your ballpark. So I guess that's thought number one. But then the second thing is, I went into this offseason thinking, if they don't spend a little bit, I'm going to assume that this group's not going to spend again. And they didn't. And that's kind of now my assumption. Am I wrong for thinking that way?
I think you're not wrong. I think we don't know. And I think I would say just a couple things. One, about attendance. Like, if you look at attendance highs are generally not the year in which the team is successful. It's the following year, because you get excitement about, hey, we just won the division title, and I'm thinking about a partial season ticket plan, and maybe my buddies and I will go in on one, and I'll do 20 games a year, or whatever it is. So that's why 2013, which it was a disappointing year, that was the World Series or bust, Davey Johnson's second year. It didn't work out. They did not win the division title, coming off the 2012 season when they broke through and Bryce was a rookie and all of that stuff.
Still their highest attended per game rate ever was that 2013 season.
2005. The inaugural season.
Yeah, that's true. But at Nats Park is what I'm talking about. But that's
correct.
True.
Correct, for sure. So you're right about that. Like, they should draw some lessons from attendances in the past. I also would say the unknowable here, and again, showing the limitations of my conversation with Mark, and I'm not sure whether he would even address this, but all of that stuff is pre-COVID, and all of that stuff is pre-COVID really laid waste to a lot of commercial real estate companies and really had a huge impact on businesses that have a large stake in like office buildings and things like that. And that is Lerner Enterprises. Now, they're diversified. They're not, I don't profess to be an expert on their business, but the question, it's a long-winded way of saying, like, did the impact of the pandemic have such a profound impact on your business that is in turn having an impact on how you run your side business, which is the Nationals? Steve Cohen in New York, it is a bad example because you don't expect, we don't have to expect the Lerners to spend $370 million on payroll, but he is very clear that, look, I made all my money in this hedge fund stuff. That is my primary business. This is my side business. I can spend money, my own personal money, on this business, on the baseball team, because I want to, and I want to be kind of a hero to Mets fans. That's a very different take than the Lerners have on their team. And I just always wonder what's the relationship between the core business that the Lerner family, grew up with, that Ted Lerner made them billionaires, and their running of the baseball team.
Barry, let me sneak one in super quick. We're up against it, but I want to know this one. If they were in the bidding for certain guys, then they said, you know what, that's probably too rich for our blood to overpay for Anthony Santander, or name that player, I think I'd feel a lot better about it. The fact that they weren't linked to anybody, I think, is the part that I find most distressing. Your reaction?
Yeah, I think that's fair, Danny. I also think there's a reality, and if you go back to the Worth example, because I think it's so analogous, like, they're in a position right now where they have to overpay to break any sort of tie, because they're on an island, they're young, and if you believe in them, up and coming, but that might not be really easily seen from the outside. So they're not going to beat the Red Sox on an equal offer for Alex Bregman. They're not going to beat the Blue Jays on an equal offer for Anthony Santander. It's a hard position to be in until they show the rest of the sport that, oh my, your good core is really, really good, and I want to be a part of that, kind of in the way the Commanders are. They're going to have to overpay to break all those ties.
Which makes sense. I don't need Alex Bregman. Christian Walker would be nice, right? I just like to walk before I could run. But it's a great piece, and really just getting to talk to Mark Lerner is an accomplishment. So well done. Barry Svrluga of the Post here on Grant and Danny. Thanks for the time. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
Yeah, go check it out in the Post. It's a worthwhile story on the Nats and Lerner.